Please stay the fuck off of my men. I like my men to be men. I could be the sluttiest hooker with like 14 dicks in my mouth every single day. But if I have a good idea that's backed up by facts, it should not matter. Feminists do not agree with that statement.
So who cares? Why not do your own thing and let them say what they want?
Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be telling you exactly why I personally am not a feminist. People have been asking me to do this video for quite a while, both on the feminist side and the non-feminist side, just because they like to hear my semi-political rants. I have made a few rants against feminism, specifically feminism in video games, etc. And I know this topic has been done to death, so what I'm gonna do is, instead of focusing on every single aspect of what's wrong with feminism, which is what I initially started to do, and I was writing a very long list, I'm gonna talk about the main reasons that come to mind for me personally as to why I would never call myself or label myself a feminist, and also as to why I don't support the modern feminist agenda. So before we get into this, a little bit of a disclaimer. Anything that I say, where I say they do this and they do that, I'm simply only generalizing. I'm not saying that every single person who identifies as a feminist is like this. I know that there are well-intentioned feminists out there. One of the reasons I don't like feminism is because how idealistic they are. But the thing about idealists is that there are a bunch of well-intentioned people within them who are just either ignorant to the facts or the application of their idealism, or maybe they just have very different ideas of what the world should be than I do. On the other hand, there are people like Christina Hoff Sommers, who are old school feminists back when feminism actually had a good purpose, and they just don't want to let go of the label because it means something to them. I get that. Okay, so we get it. Just because I'm not a feminist doesn't mean that I'm belittling and berating every single individual feminist. I hate and like people on their individual merits, not on what labels they identify with, unlike a lot of feminists. So the first big issue I have with feminism is that they seem to appeal only to emotions rather than to logic and rational thought. Instead of having facts that are backed up by actual statistical evidence, they'll often harp on specific anecdotal evidence, which, as we all know, is not actual evidence. Or they'll gain followers just by appealing to their listeners' emotions. Sometimes bad shit happens, sometimes things will make you sad, but acting upon those emotions is not always the best course of action. In fact, it's most often not the best course of action. And oftentimes our emotional response can manifest into actual physical violence. And you see a lot of this in feminism and social justice, where people get offended, they get butthurt, or they think that they have some kind of righteous motivation to actually physically assault someone just for their views or ideals. That is not okay with me. I don't think it's ever okay to discourage someone's speech with violence. Firstly, because that's not an equal response. It's actually an overreaction. Secondly, that might deter people from actually speaking the truth because they might be afraid to do so. I just think it's very important to never take steps to censor people, and we'll get to that later. Staying on the topics of feminists being more emotional than rational, this often manifests from them being idealists, and as I said in the beginning, I do not like idealism. If all you are is an idealist and not a realist at the same time, you get people with good intentioned ideas that, when implemented, absolutely destroy the world. Things like communism. Feminists also employ not well thought out straw men for their arguments. It just seems like a lot of their arguments are very surface based and they don't actually think about the implications of implementing a lot of these things that they propose. For instance, they'll often use buzzwords and say certain things that make you look or feel like a bad person. If you're not a feminist, you're not for the equality of the sexes. If you're not a feminist, you're in support of rape, because feminism is all about stopping rape. Most of us who are not feminists believe in this, unless, you know, you're just an asshole or something. But we actually look deeper than these words to see how these things are being implemented, and we're not okay with changing the world in this way. It's employing things like affirmative action, oppressing males and making them feel lesser in order to empower females, censorship, socialist ideas. If you're not a feminist, you're a piece of shit. Perhaps feminists, everyone who doesn't agree with you, isn't an asshole or a misogynist. Maybe they just see the world differently than you, have different perspectives, and find it important to keep their freedom of speech and freedom of expression intact. Yes, we agree that the genders should be equal. No, we do not agree with your methods of getting there. Often a feminist's strongest argument, or at least strongest to them, is demonizing someone or attacking their morals, because if they don't believe X, they must be Y. If you don't believe in feminism, you must be a fucking rapist monster. That's not how it works. Things have nuance. That is another thing I take issue with. They are terrible at debating. It's basically like, you don't agree with me, I'm gonna attack your character. If that doesn't work, I'm just gonna completely ignore you, stay away from conversation with you, shut you down, or try to censor you altogether. If all you have to attack people with is a bunch of vitriol about the way that they look, act, or sound, or something totally unrelated to their argument, you don't actually have an argument to begin with. I could be the sluttiest hooker with like 14 dicks in my mouth every single day. But if I have a good idea that's backed up by facts, it should not matter. Feminists do not agree with that statement. Another facet of this is that I believe that feminism is no longer necessary in the West. There have been more than I can count videos asking feminists for one substantial, objective, and quantifiable way that men have it better than women as per the laws, rules, and regulations of the country. Yes, there are still gonna be dudes who think of women as nothing more than sex objects. Yes, there are still gonna be companies that quietly hire a man over a woman. And yeah, there will still be guys who rape women. There will still be guys who talk down to women. But it seems like feminists only see things from their glasses. They can only see things from their perspective. They don't see that men have to deal with people talking down to them all the time as well. They don't see, on the flip side, what all of this affirmative action toward women is doing to men, and all of the ways that men don't have it easy in society. Everyone's perception of the world and everyone's situation varies greatly. There are men who have it easier than certain women, and certain women who have it easier than certain men. And now that we have an equilibrium of all of the legality between men and women's rights, now they're going for something that's completely unattainable without adopting some kind of terrible fascist rule, which is equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. Women have all the same rights as men. And in some places, women have more rights than men. For instance, custody battles and shit like that. And I'm not gonna get into whether or not I think that's correct or just. All I want to point out is that factually, women have the same rights as men in the West, so there's no real solid, easy way to control everyone having the exact same quality of outcome for their lives. Some people are rich, some people are poor, some people are good looking, some people are ugly, some people are tall, some people are short. That is just a fact of life. Life is not fair. Our justice system, our laws, are all there to do their best for you. Everything else is in your hands. Or up to chance, and you just can't change it. And this idea that you should be in control of your own future is something that feminists do not like to hear. Okay, so we all have equal laws, and most feminists have to kind of agree with that fact because it's objective. So what are they complaining about in the West? Well, they're complaining about things that are purely based on their subjective morality or their subjective preferences, like someone's catcalling me. I'm in the business of denying biology and thinking that we're not a sexually dimorphic species. And a bunch of other bullshit that can totally be perceived as way worse than it is when you're living in an echo chamber of people telling you that you live in a rape culture, and anything that everyone does is some kind of quiet microaggression of misogyny. It's basically just fucking paranoia. It tells people that they need to be handed things in life rather than working on themselves. If they're sad about something or if someone doesn't like something that they do, they shouldn't improve upon it to better themselves. And one of the biggest issues I have with this is the infantilization of adults. I have worked my entire YouTube career to make people feel happy with themselves, to let people know that it's okay to be different and it's okay to express yourself the way that you want to and improve upon yourself, whether it's aesthetically or intellectually, in the direction that you choose. Eve, shh. To be yourself always in the face of adversity and to not care what other people think. The feminist agenda, on the other hand, wants to put people in safe spaces, wants to favor feelings over the truth, and wants to basically regress back to people not even being able to handle the real world. I, on the other hand, think that we should prepare people for the real world, that not everyone is gonna be nice to them and how to handle this, and make stronger and more educated people overall, rather than just sheltering them. Feminists think that they should coddle and treat adults like children. A speaker that we don't agree with is coming to the university. He or she is smarter than we are, and we have no common sense, logic, problem-solving skills in our repertoire to make sure that we don't get easily offended and can have an actual objective conversation. So we're just gonna scream and chant louder until he shuts up. Or we can attack him with our fists to ensure he'll never come back. As a libertarian, I'm not okay with people taking away other people's rights just so that someone else doesn't get offended or hurt or sad for a little bit. And as a moral nihilist, I don't think that we should ever base a movement or a movement's actions, especially when it's infringing on our constitution and our right to freedom of speech, just for someone's very subjective morals. Another reason I'm not a feminist is because I'm not a fucking victim. When I see others who are better off than me, I don't digress into this jealous bubble of hatred. I instead take from them inspiration and tips. When I'm unhappy, I don't prefer to bring people down to my unhappiness level just to stay perpetually negative. There are gonna be a few bad apples in the world. People who will rape, people who will murder, and people who will just be generally mean to other people. And I take steps to protect myself from that and to better prepare myself for that. Instead of being a perpetual victim, I prefer to arm myself with self-esteem, facts, and if I feel like I'm going into a dangerous place, weapons. No one owes me anything, society doesn't owe me anything, and if I make a mistake, I fucking own up to it. I don't blame everyone else for everything that I do wrong. It's my responsibility to take care of my mental health, no one else's, especially when the things that trigger me are so subjective. And I am fully aware that complaining is a largely inferior method to just changing things you want to be changed. The only thing that anyone owes me is kisses. I got lip gloss on her face. She's purring, but she hates me. The idea that society lives in a rape culture and the people who do rape we're never told that it's not okay to rape is absolutely ridiculous. Society as a whole knows that it's not okay to rape. Rapists know that it's not okay to rape. They were either gonna be bad apples anyway, or there's something mentally unstable about them. So what's the better course of action? The more logical course of action? Prepare yourself. Looking at things rationally and logically is not a strong suit of feminists, and if it were, 90% of the problems that they propose are still persistent in Western culture, would no longer be there to their perception. Eve's back there, I'm just gonna try to ignore her. They assume that people don't like catcalling. Eve loves catcalling. Watch. Eve! My cat might be a feminist. The victimhood is one of the most disgusting parts, in my opinion, of feminism. Fucking man up, guys. Seriously. Another thing I can't stand about feminism is people parroting statistics without the context of those statistics and perpetuating false facts. There's no way that all of these feminists don't know by now the reason why there's a wage gap or pink tax. At this point, it's gotta be no longer ignorance and more just willfully lying to the public in order to further their agenda. I hate that feminism indoctrinates people with buzzwords and nicely sounding false statistics that further their agenda. One thing I hate about statistics is that there's so much nuance that goes into them. People will find a correlation and immediately assume causation without looking into it, without looking at even who did the research, and without looking into actual factual causes as to why that might be the case. They just take it, run with it, and it's absolutely the most intellectually dishonest thing. Another reason that I'm not a feminist is because while there is a group of feminists who are sex-positive feminists, most feminists turn on me. Most feminists do not like me even before they hear of whether or not I'm a feminist, simply because my lifestyle and my set of morals and beliefs, or lack thereof, they don't agree with. There's a ton of them not being able to get their narrative straight or what they want to do with the movement straight. It's basically just like a place for each woman who feels victimized and wronged in some way, some very personal, subjective, and perspective-based way, and then trying to change the world in the direction of their personal preferences. So yeah, there's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of disowning women and going against women, blatantly against their cause. I mean, after all, I'm a woman too, and you're fighting for women's rights, not feminist women's rights, right? At large, it is a very hypocritical movement, and that's another thing I can't stand about it. And the biggest one, censorship. One of the most important things in the world to me is freedom of speech. I will always fight and speak out against censorship at any age for any reason of any content that agrees with me, content that very much does not agree with me, because I believe in furthering and gaining knowledge. If I'm stuck in an echo chamber and I don't hear what the other side says and what the other side's views are, I will never better my own argument or be able to see whether or not I fully believe in my argument. The more knowledge I gain, the more information I have from all different sides, the stronger and more confident I am about my own position. That's why I believe that freedom of speech, freedom to state facts, and freedom to express is far more important than anyone's feelings. When you hear things like, why is it bad to not hurt a person's feelings? To an idealist, that sounds good. But when doing so is the implementation of silencing certain groups or certain people, or taking away someone else's rights, that is absolutely not okay to me, and I can't imagine it being okay to anyone else who has any rational mindset, because you know what? Today, it might be people who aren't feminists, who aren't leftists. Tomorrow, it could be you who's silenced. By silencing someone else, you're saying that it's okay for the tide to turn and for you to be silenced. And that will never be okay to me. So while I don't agree with feminists, and I'm not a feminist, and I abhor when people call me a feminist simply on the grounds that I believe in egalitarian principles, I am so glad that you guys have the ability to speak, not only because it makes great YouTube content, all of the feminist cringe fests, but because allowing you to speak only strengthens my arguments, my beliefs, and my passion for discussion. Unlike feminists, I don't want to sit and have my beliefs parroted back to me. I want my shit to be challenged, I want to gain knowledge, and I want to better my argument. And that's why my comment section is always open. The freedom to offend is the freedom to express, is the freedom of speech. And on top of that, that censorship would take away a lot of the porn, a lot of the video games, and a lot of the art that I love so much. If you don't like it, just don't watch. If you don't agree with it, tell me why. I can be strong and still be a woman and still admit that I'm gonna be weaker than the average man. And I don't deny biology. I don't get triggered by facts. Alright guys, it's been a really long time. This is gonna be a really long video, but those are some of the main reasons why I am not a feminist and why I don't agree at all with the feminist ideologies. A lot of people are gonna say things like, well, Tara, these are only the radical feminists. These are only the mainstream feminists. Real feminism is not like that. You know, the real Scotsman fallacy? Well, in response to that, when a movement or when a label, such as feminism, becomes so toxic, so widespreadly negative, and where these radical feminists are lauded by prominent feminists in the community, at that point, it's time to shed that label. And this is where I disagree with Christina Hoff Sommers, who thinks that the label can be saved. I think the whole movement needs a complete new foundation from the ground up. Instead of focusing on Western first world problems or perceived problems, find a safe and fair way to help actual struggling countries that already have their own feminist movements. And I do not condone pushing Western values on other civilizations, but working towards something that can better the lives of women who actually do have issues, that I can get behind. And that's why I think egalitarian is a better word. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you want to see more stuff like this, I do have one more idea for an anti-feminist video that's gonna be more jokey. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah! Oh my god, and one thing I forgot. The concept of toxic masculinity. That is a reason I am not okay with feminists. If there is anything in this world that I adore, it is toxic masculinity. Please stay the fuck off of my men. I like my men to be men. I indulge in masculinity, as feminine as I am, and I appreciate everything about a man's masculinity. Everything. But don't listen to me. Don't listen to anyone else. Think for yourself. Unlike feminists, I'm not gonna try trick you or goad you into thinking the way that I do just because I believe it's right. Do research, have an open mind, listen to the opposing side, and formulate a well-researched opinion. Be yourself, do what you want. In the end, that's all that matters. All right, I'm done now, for real.